Breaking news, the Bush campaign just announcing major campaign staff cuts. Now the word is that Jeb Bush is huddling with his brother and his father, remember, two former U.S. presidents, and many are calling this the emergency family meeting, and it could actually be the last stand. We actually hope to learn more during the hour. Joining me now to discuss it, Christina Ravalli, FGA Action, Katrina Pearson, the Tea Party Leadership Fund spokesperson, and Christian Whiten, actually a former Bush State Department advisor. So, Christian, you know the Bushes a little bit more than everybody else, I would suspect. You know, earlier this week on Outnumbered, I said out loud, I think this is going to be Jeb Bush's last stand. Just the way the money is being handled, the way he's free-falling in the polls, and he just looks like a lifeless candidate. This is an emergency meeting. What should we expect?
Well, I think you're going to expect a last try to rally the Bush fundraising base. These are people who have donated to the Bush campaigns year over year, somewhat going back to 1980 when George H.W. Bush challenged Ronald Reagan and others for the presidency. He ended up with the VP position. So I think it's an attempt to gauge how much support there is there because the numbers aren't that good. I mean, there's been a lot of big fundraising, a tremendous amount of money going into a super PAC, but Bush is a little bit short on hard dollars that you can spend in a campaign. He's had to cease flying private jets at least a little bit. He's asked some campaign staff to leave. Others have taken pay cuts or must now work for free. Also, he's extremely reliant on big donors. The National Review did an analysis, and the ratio of big donors to small donors for Jeb is 15 to 1. These are people who probably have tapped out, can't even give more if they want to. It's the flip side for other candidates like Ben Carson, where it's 1 to 12. In other words, 1 big donor to 12 small donors. So it's really not a good picture for Jeb.
There's no doubt. You know, Katrina, ironically, the move by Jeb to sort of, I guess, be transparent when he put out that list of all the big donors and underscore what Christian was just saying. Okay, you know, these folks put out 17 grand. That's it. And he has no grassroots support. We see it in the numbers, whether it's polling numbers or dollar numbers. And it feels like deja vu all over again. It seems like Rick Perry had a very similar scenario, the same script.
Well, yeah, Charles, I think this is Jeb pretty much on his way out. I don't see him climbing in the polls at all. I think what they're trying to do now is to buy time, hoping that maybe some of the other candidates will come out and put their support behind him, hopefully giving him that boost to move up. So it's their last-ditch effort to save the Bush campaign. And I actually was wondering last night if they were going to have the discussion over Thanksgiving, but now I guess they're going to have it earlier.
Cutting staff, Christina. The poll numbers are frightening. He's got no life. Even now, in the last week, I've seen so many pro-Bush, Jeb Bush supporters come out and admit on national television or in other periodicals that our guy has no energy, to Donald Trump's point. It feels like this is the end of the road.
It does a little bit, and it's a little bit surprising. When we look at Jeb Bush's record in Florida as a governor and a lot of his Medicaid reform and his welfare reform, he had some good policy issues. And like you said, it's very similar to Rick Perry. They were good governors. They had good economic records, but for some reason, they're just not catching traction.
Christian, do you think he got too comfortable with that gigantic war chest, the establishment behind him? It feels like he never... I wouldn't say never took this seriously, but he always had a more cavalier attitude that at some point it would all kick in and destiny would unfold.
It rubbed everyone enormously the wrong way. The shock and awe, not just with the big dollars, but also with the big names, including on foreign policy, rolling out a lot of names that people recall, and not necessarily the best ones. Some are good, some are bad, of foreign policy from his brother's administration. And just a sense, statements like you have to lose the primary to win the general election. I mean, to deprecate the party whose nomination you are seeking before you have any chance of getting it. Going forward, I think a telltale will be whether those establishment donors gravitate more and more to Marco Rubio. Not that I necessarily support him, but that is sort of considered the establishment alternative to Jeb, someone who is somewhat in that same mold, who has the same views on immigration. For example, if you see those donors flip over, that's when Jeb is in terminal trouble.
Katrina, we've got the GOP debate next week. I would suspect that would be the knockout blow for several of these candidates who are hanging on by a thread. Where their support goes, it remains to be seen. But are you so much shocked that the governors, these well-known governors, to Christina's point, dropping like flies? I thought Walker had a great chance coming into this. I thought 4 years ago, Perry was, of course, I would forget his name. Perry was a wonderful candidate. And now, of course, Jeb, who I never thought would be a great candidate but had a lot of money behind him, seemed to be falling like flies. What's the deal with the governors? What's wrong with the governors and the GOP voters?
Grassroots, Charles, it's a big deal these days. And what grassroots folks know is you have these governors that look good on paper, but what they've done is they've taken the D.C. blueprint and put it right on top of their state capitals. We're seeing tons of corporatism, Rick Perry being one of them, which is actually stemming from his indictment. We're looking at overspending. We're looking at hitting budgets and just progressive legislation coming out of governors in their states. And grassroots are paying attention to that. All in all, nationally, grassroots are saying, no more of this. It's your turn.
Right.
We're going to pick our primary candidate.
Oh, boy, I know. I just thought it was the year of the governor. I was so wrong.